Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 34 of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. If you only watch on YouTube, I believe this is episode 4. This is the 4th episode that we have uploaded, but it is our 34th. And we will continue to upload every interview that we do, but I actually have a bunch of on-video interviews still saved from past episodes, and so I will continue to upload those as I get around to it. Now, I have a special guest for you guys today. His name is Jamie Kilstein. You guys may know him in the Jiu-Jitsu community for posting some absolutely hilarious videos on the gram. The Jamie Kilstein is his Instagram. If you guys want to check those out, he has some really, really good and creative and funny stuff that he posts. He is also a stand-up comedian. He is also a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a podcaster. He has 2 different podcasts, actually. He has Rear Naked Radio, which is my personal favorite Jiu-Jitsu related podcast, and he has his Misfits over on the Jamie Kilstein podcast. Both are excellent podcasts that I would recommend. They just did on Rear Naked Radio, they just did a Greg Jackson interview. They just released it, and it was excellent. It was really, really just a fun podcast to listen to. He is an incredibly interesting guy, but we're not talking about Greg Jackson. We are talking about Jamie Kilstein, who was also featured on the Joe Rogan Experience multiple times and on Conan. He wasn't on Conan multiple times, so he's not that big of a deal. But I digress. What Jamie and I get into on this podcast, a little bit of jiu-jitsu, a lot about life and pro wrestling, which is just life. But I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. Just a little disclaimer, if you are listening with someone who is younger, Jamie has a bit of a potty mouth. I'm going to talk to him about that soon. But I know some people like to listen with their kids. If you are one of those people that like to listen with your kids and you aren't comfortable with that, just don't listen to this episode. Or just cover your child's ears every time there's about to be a cuss word. Whatever you guys want. But without further ado, here's the episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. All right. I think we are good.
Cool.
All right. So how are you doing?
I'm good, man. Yeah, I'm good. I'm avoiding panic, and I'm trying to convince myself to stay healthy when jiu-jitsu isn't the only motivating factor of being healthy. Like, I was never an athlete until I did jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. Like, I failed out of gym class. Like, legitimately failed gym class in high school. Which, by the way, if anyone wants to know how to fail gym class, you get stoned every day and pretend you forgot your shorts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I found jiu-jitsu, and I was like, because I love fighting, because I was like, oh, I have to do something or I'm going to fucking die. And then, you know, I was a child of 90s martial arts movies.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to do, and we would watch like VHS UFCs. And I started jiu-jitsu. It's the reason I got in shape. And then whenever jiu-jitsu is taken away from me, I'm like, I don't know how to go to the gym. Like, I don't know how to, like, I couldn't even get myself to run once lockdown happened until, I swear to God, I was watching Lionheart with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And there was this scene where he put on a hoodie to go run. And I was like, yeah, it's fucking cool. I'm going to go put on a hoodie and run. And then I did it. And I realized, like, I have to juxtapose, like, I still have to pretend to be a fighter to do non-fighter exercises. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I found just the time, every bit of exercise that I do is for jiu-jitsu, right? So everything is about, like, being able to keep myself on the mat, being able to not waste so much energy so I can get there and train that night. Yep. So it's like very efficient. Well, I keep going into like exercise and I'm like, well, now that 10 minutes is done. Yeah. I have 2 hours that I would be normally doing jiu-jitsu that I can't do it right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally what kept me in shape, where like I have to watch my diet more. I have to, and it hit a road because I was like, I'm not gonna sit in my fucking place and do like hip escapes. My friend Drew, who runs Because Jitsu, who I co-host my podcast with, he was like, warm-ups are the things everybody avoids doing, and now it's all we can do. It's like we're being like punished by the jiu-jitsu gods. And like, so, but even push-ups and stuff, I was like, oh, just do like a body weight exercise. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit until I just spent a weekend, because I ordered healthy food, but it took a while to come. So I was like, I'll just treat myself. And I ordered like pizza and some bullshit. And I ate so much and felt so fucking sick that if I don't have some kind of check, like Corona will give me diabetes. Like I'm not worried about Corona. I'm worried about like going into the hospital with like cholesterol issues before I turn 40.
I get that. So what kind of pizza did you eat?
Just plain, man. I'm a vegetarian. I like veggie stuff, but I was like, no, I ordered a pizza and I ordered cheesy bread, which is a different version of pizza. And I ate both of them by myself in one sitting because addicts are really good at rationalizing shit. So I was like, well, I want to be healthy tomorrow, which means I can't have leftovers, which means I have to eat it all now. And so I ate a medium pizza and a box of cheesy bread, which is designed for definitely more than one person, possibly 3 people. And I ate it. And then like when I felt sick and full, I was like, I should stop eating. And then I was like, oh, I'll just smoke weed so I get hungry. And then I'll eat the rest, that's what they do at, I had this guy, Rob Wolf, on my podcast, and he's this health expert. I think he's like a #1 bestseller, but he's like a big paleo guy. And he's a jiu-jitsu guy too. And he was telling me that at hot dog eating contests, sometimes guys will get so full they're about to throw up. And instead of stopping eating, he may have said this on Rogan's too, they'll eat ice cream because you can essentially trick your palate where if you eat a different type of food, you go, oh, okay, I feel fine. And then you can move on to the other food. So I did that with weed. And then I ate all the pizza. And then I hated myself. And then I almost texted my ex. And then I fell asleep like on the couch. And then the next day I was like, yep, time to put that hoodie on again. And now I'm like, I have to run every day. Because if I don't run every day, that shit's going to happen. So I'm going to come back to jiu-jitsu with fucking worse hips and knees from running, I assume, because I never ran before. So there's like a trail by me, and I just, try to figure it out.
You'll be able to add more pressure if you gain some weight, right? So you'll be able to...
I did think about that. But I will also be too depressed to go to jiu-jitsu. Like, it's crazy how much nutrition and working out like affects your mental health, where whenever like a doctor's like, you should probably stay off it for a week, like, because I tweaked like something. And I'm like, yeah. But if I don't go into jiu-jitsu, I'm going to fucking kill myself. So isn't that worse? Where like it really does. I mean, the hardest part right now, I think for everybody listening to the show is like, how do we keep that athlete mentality? Because a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, I mean, even me, it's like I'm a Marcelo Brown belt. I coached at Henzo's, and I make a living with a jiu-jitsu podcast. And if someone called me an athlete, I'd be like, ugh. Like, I think a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, like we were nerds or stoners or whatever. There's probably a lot of overlap with surfers where I still have a hard time considering myself an athlete. So when jiu-jitsu is removed, I go, oh, I guess we derail now. I'm listening to more comedy podcasts, and they're all fucking smoking and drinking. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. And I just get so fucking depressed, where the challenge right now is like, how do we keep that athlete mentality with like what we eat, how we're taking care of ourselves, mindfulness, all this stuff, when the thing we love doing, the reason we do it is removed, like isn't there. And that's kind of the fucking challenge right now.
Well, in jiu-jitsu too, the better you get at jiu-jitsu, a lot of times the less of an athlete you can become, right? It's pretty easy. It's really easy to just go in and be like, oh man, well now I don't have to train hard because I am good enough at jiu-jitsu that I don't have to be strong. I don't have to be explosive.
Right, that's a great fucking point. I'm small, you because we've met. You are in much better shape than me, and I'm still small enough that I have to continue to stay on my toes. In fact, even when I get a black belt, I'll be the black belt all the purple belts are trying to fucking murder because I'm smaller than them. And so like I still have to kind of stay on my toes, but I do know that feeling. I mean, dude, have you ever rolled with a black belt who's so good that you don't even get a workout? Like when I rolled with Marcelo all the time, I would be tired because Marcelo, he'll play with you like an animal with his food, and he'll let you move around, and the rounds were always very fast. But I've rolled with some black belts where they're just on my back for 6 minutes, and I'm just kind of trying to do this, and I'm like, well, I'm not tired, but I'm not tired because I literally couldn't move. And there was nothing that either of us, like I couldn't do anything.
See, I've rolled with black belts that I should experience that with, but my mind in those situations has always said, hey, maybe if you tried to be stronger and more explosive and really wear yourself out, that might win you the round. And so then so then it ends up being worse for me, you know?
Yeah. Oh, you just fucking flail like the car lot Gumby thing.
Maybe if I were to bench press this guy, when he's on my back, maybe that would be the most logical thing for me to do here.
Isn't that funny when you catch yourself like, you know, you've been training for a long time, you're a black belt, and you catch yourself doing some like blue belt shit out of panic where you're just like, did I just fucking do that? And like, and your brain, you're experienced enough to know what you just did was some bullshit, but you're still like, as it's happening, you're in disbelief. The black belt in you is just like, what did we just try to do there?
It's so for me, this actually happened 3 weeks ago. I have this ankle lock that I've been doing a ton, and just a little bit different, and it puts your knee in a different spot, makes it much harder for people to defend in the normal traditional way you would defend an ankle lock. So what happens is it causes people to roll away from it and belly down. And that's the last thing you want to do in an ankle lock, because then you're in a belly down ankle lock.
Right.
And so I always have been, doing it a lot lately. So a lot of my students are doing it. Well, one of them, I was rolling with one of my blue belts, and I kind of let guys get deep in stuff and then talk trash, like a black belt should, and be like, oh, you don't even know how to finish this. Well, my blue belt Christian got it perfect. He had it. No. And what did I do? Exactly what I told them not to do. I'm like, hey, you've got to beat the foot. You don't belly down, because then you're in a belly down ankle lock. Of course, I was like, oh gosh, this hurts. Maybe I should belly down.
Oh my God.
Of course, I bellied down. I ended up getting out of it just because I think he didn't expect me to belly down, so he kind of lost it there. And I was like, I made the complete wrong move. And as soon as it got done, I was like, yep, I did exactly what I yell at you for doing.
That is so fucking funny. By the way, that reminded me, the 2 times I've gone unconscious, not even in tournaments, it was like right after I got my purple belt, and I thought I could start doing what you just described you do as a black belt, which is, and it was right when I was like, I'm just going to keep it playful or whatever. And I was rolling with this one guy who I just, again, would just like steamroll every day. So I just let him get, I let him get my back, which that's fine. But then I let him get like a bow and arrow pretty fucking deep. And I just wake up remembering everybody surrounding me and me being like, oh, motherfucker, not only did this guy tap me, but now everybody had to run over. But the worst version of that was we were doing this drill at Marcelo's where he had them start with a bow and arrow. And I was with, and I did rounds with some brown belts. I roll great with like world champion black belts and stuff because there's no pressure on me. So I can be really relaxed and flowy and whatever. But if I have like a big purple belt who's an asshole, that's when I start to make these dumbass mistakes. But so this guy was a white belt. And so I go, oh, I'm a fucking purple belt. I'm gonna let him get it in a little deeper. And as he's getting it in, the bell starts. And I was like, all right, I'm just This is weird. That's weird that I can't. And what I didn't know is he is a black belt in judo. And so I let this guy with infinitely better grip strength than I do get super deep. Next thing, everybody is once again around me. And I went unconscious both those fucking times.
So when I started training, I was 14, and we were at an MMA school. It's actually Matt Hughes's gym, and that was where we started training at. And one of my buddies, who was about my age, maybe he was a year older than me, 15, weighed like 120 pounds. Everybody called him McLovin because that was his body type. Well, one of the guys was an MMA fighter, who's I will not name, but fought. Huh?
Pat Miletich.
No, it wasn't him. But he fought on The Ultimate Fighter. He didn't make it on. He fought to get into The Ultimate Fighter. Didn't make it on. But really big, strong athlete, and he's probably at like 200 pounds at the time. And Justin, my buddy, is 120, and he would always just mess with Justin, make fun of him, as you should anyone who is smaller than you, right?
Sure.
And this guy was also
natural pecking order of things.
Yeah, that's how you should treat people. But so this guy, he was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Justin was a blue belt, and he always would say, "Oh, I'm going to put on my gi one day, and I'm going to beat you down." And so Justin was like, "Hey, you should put on your gi." And the guy's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You can start anywhere you want." And Justin goes, "Well, can I start on your back?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." So he starts on his back, and he goes, "Well, Justin goes, can I start with this grip?" And he grabs a cross lapel grip, like for a bow and arrow. And the guy's like, "Yeah, sure." And they say go. He goes right into a bow and arrow choke.
This is great.
This guy fights it for like 5-6 seconds. And I go, "Justin, I think he's out." And Justin was kind of like, "Well, let me just make sure. He's been terrorizing me for a long time." And, a few seconds later, he lets go. This dude's dead. The dude wakes up like in just a huge explosive fit, jumped up top of Justin like he was passing his guard, and then like looked around and didn't understand what was going on, ran out of the matted area, and then fell into the chair of the fly machine, like where there was workout equipment, and woke up on the fly machine, was like, had no idea what happened.
He made that motherfucker teleport.
He did. And dude was doing the Thriller the whole time that he was falling out of the cage. It was amazing. It was a great.
That's the heroic version of my story. That's the good guy. Yeah, that's incredible. That's amazing.
Yeah, the good guy won. So that was a really fun experience to get to watch, and then to not have any fear that this guy was going to kill you later too, because I just got to watch it happen.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God. Have you ever done that? Where you fucking catch, like I've caught a couple UFC guys, I've caught way bigger black belts, and you have that moment where you're so happy, immediately followed by, are they gonna try to fucking kill me? And like looking at the clock, and it's a nightmare. It's so scary. You can't even enjoy it because you're just like, I guess I die. And then I got injured a couple times. Because like when that would happen, I would go, okay, they look pissed, so I'm just gonna go like lighter and just chill out and let them get their ego, evened out. And I got injured a couple times that way because I realized, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but it's this weird balance where because I was smaller, and I was even smaller back then, I was like 140. It's almost like I kind of got to go harder or else I'm going to get hurt. Not harder like strengthy or spazzy, but if I am totally lackadaisical or like nihilistic in my rolling, like I could actually get fucking injured if I'm going with some big dummy. It's like kind of finding that balance of like, okay, I want to flow and I want to be relaxed. Like my favorite guys to watch are like Ryan Hall and Glover and Huron. Huron's huge. I've rolled with Huron, but he's really flowy. But at the same time, you got to like be careful too.
You really do. And that's, I think, just something about jiu-jitsu in general is really, even if you tap quick enough, there are guys that you roll with all the time, like every day, that could crush you if they really wanted to. You know what I mean? They could kill you if they really wanted to. And so it's a really interesting thing of like putting your life in somebody's hands by slapping and bumping with them, you know?
I know. That's all we have to do. Yeah, a slap and a bump is essentially our verbal contract that I could end up in the hospital and like, it's cool.
Yeah, and hey, this guy signed a waiver. You know, I can't even sue the owner of the gym because of this.
No, I mean, that's one of, I did this seminar at the 10th Planet in New York before all this shit happened. And I ended up staying after for at least an hour talking to people about mental health. And all I really said was, a lot of us use jiu-jitsu to balance out the craziness that's happening in our head or in our hearts. And, the majority of people, because it's a new school, so there was like, 30 white belts and like a couple blue belts. And you hit a phase, white belt, blue belt, usually it's mid blue belt, where you start to get pissed off. And you start to go to jiu-jitsu and you're hitting the mat and you're not progressing, or some new wrestler tapped you out, and you start to resent the thing that is there to fix us. That's our mental health. It would be like if you went to church and the Bible wasn't there and you were like, oh, this is bullshit. Like you're getting frustrated at this thing that's supposed to help you. So it's figuring out that balance of like, how do I still keep this my safe place? You know what I mean? Like I want to challenge myself and I want to push myself, but I also, every day that I walk in, and I think a lot of us are going to realize that when we come back, is also sort of like honoring how special this is. Because and the reason I thought of that is what I told them is I was like, even the days where you get your ass kicked the entire time, you are still braver than 99% people's biggest fear. It's public speaking and it's physical confrontation for the most part. And so by showing up to a weird little ratty ass place where you are signing a waiver and putting on a dumb outfit and a stupid white belt as a fucking grown up to give permission to strangers to fight you voluntarily, you already kind of like win, dude. You already did the cool thing. You already did the brave thing. And so when we start to get mad at ourselves or frustrated, I think a lot of people forget how insane and how cool it is that that just by signing up, we're kind of more badass than the majority of people you see walking down the street,
Dude, I always look at that especially from a competitive standpoint too. Anytime I have students that are getting ready to compete, everybody's nervous when they go to compete.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so they're getting ready to compete, and I always will tell them, like, look, no matter what the outcome is, you're going to go to work on Monday morning, and nobody else got to experience what you got to experience. Yeah. That's a win in itself. You know what I mean? Like old lady Kronyats who sits at the cubicle next to you, she didn't go fight somebody this weekend.
Fucking goddamn old lady Kronyats. I think about her often. Always passing judgment at the water cooler. Yeah, dude, you're totally right. And like, when you said go back to work Monday, I used to think about that because I had a phase where I couldn't train at like the bigger class of Marcelo. So I was going into the early morning class, which was like 7 a.m. And there was something so, to be a total cliche guy, Fight Club about the subway ride home, where I'm going back into Brooklyn after fighting men, and I'm still, even though I showered, there's still like new sweat, and I see everybody in their business suits going the opposite direction, and you would feel like, yeah, fuck yeah, you know what I mean? Like I just did something crazy. Like the sun just came up, and I was just like fighting dudes, and that's so cool. And I think that's, so it. Again, especially for competitors, it's like you have to be hard on yourself. Not hard on yourself. You have to be critical. and always want to improve. But if you stop having fun, you're kind of fucked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is, it's hard to find that balance. And that's actually something that I wanted to ask you about. You're a comedian, you're a writer, you're a podcaster, obviously you're a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. You post all kinds of great jiu-jitsu material on YouTube and Instagram.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you like it.
And so it's good stuff. And so, and so a lot of it, and pretty much all of it is like creative stuff, right? And so how do you, in jiu-jitsu, do you find yourself wanting to be really creative all the time? Or is that a place where you're not feeling like you need to be creative?
That's a great question. That's a really
I'm full
question.
of them. Yeah. That's the only one I have, actually. That's the end of the podcast.
I know. I just realized we did a half an hour and I was like, oh yeah, we haven't had any questions. So I have a lot of thoughts on that. First of all, every time I hear what I do in list form, I just want to apologize to my father. I also, at one point, tried to be a professional wrestler. I swear to God.
I actually have literally 2 questions down. We're going to get into pro wrestling.
Amazing. Great. And so I just had Ron Funches, who's this amazing comedian podcaster, on my podcast the other day, and we both tried to be, when he was on this sitcom, I think he was on Whitney Cummings sitcom, he was like 300 pounds and he lost a bunch of weight, obsessed with professional wrestling, and both of us actually in our 30s went to a wrestling school to be like, yeah, fuck it, we're in our 30s and comedians and totally unhealthy, let's do this. So anyway, in the beginning, I feel like, and this is the advice I would give to comedians too, it's like you get people who want to start stand up because they're the funny guy and they're like, oh, just go up and riff, and I'm like, you are in for a world of hurt. And are gonna bomb so aggressively. Or podcasting, like I get really excited to give people podcasting advice. Unfortunately, most of my podcasting advice is like very it's like kind of hippie shit. It's like conceptual. It's all about finding yourself. And they're like, cool, how do we get advertisers? And I'm like, you're thinking about it wrong. You're already wrong. Because people are like, well, I just want to like sit around and like get high like Joe Rogan does with like my friends. And it's like, well, right, but Joe Rogan is Joe Rogan and his friends are his friends. And like, you have to do what makes you different and what makes you you. And so, but at the same time, you have to learn some form of structure. So when I went into jiu-jitsu, I started late. I started when I was like 28. No, that's not true. I trained when I was like from 17 to 21, then stopped, started seriously training like twice a day when I was like 28. And so for me, starting late was kind of cool because, and this will circle to your question, I swear to God. I had been beaten down enough by life to be humble. So I kind of walked into the gym and I was like, well, I'm not as athletic as like these 19-year-olds who like flew from Brazil to train with Marcelo and support their family and like sleep on the mats in between classes. But what I can do is I can try to be a little smarter, a little more savvy. And the main thing I can do is I mean, if I kept going, I probably would have gotten my black belt when I was like 25-ish. And I probably would have been worse as a black belt than I am now. Because since I started late, I was like, let's pay more attention. Let's ask more questions. Let's not try to show off as much. Let's not get us fucking mad when someone taps us out, as a lot of these young guys who are like fucking hungry do. And I think that's why I progressed the way I progressed. However, once I got my purple belt, which is when everyone says like you start developing a game, blue belt, my white belt never tapped anyone. Literally didn't tap anybody until I got my blue belt, which is very humbling. Blue belt, abject panic. Don't want to get my blue belt taken away from me because I finally got a blue belt. Purple belt, chilled the fuck out. and started figuring out what my game was. And because I have a very weird creative brain, that's when I started to make my game very cool. And that's when I feel like the creativity really helped me. What I would say for people, who are kind of creative brained, when you're a white belt, I'm sure you have plenty of students who you're like, we're going to teach you how to escape from mount. And they're like, but I just saw a flying bear and bolo. I want to learn that. And you're like, you have to learn the basics to make the creative stuff work and to make the creative stuff better. So like my game is based around the guillotine. I'll just hit it from every weird places. When I tried to start developing that as a blue belt, I just got my back taken all the time, or it would put me in more trouble. I was the guy holding onto a guillotine when they were in fucking side control. Through trial and error, through creativity, through being weird, through my brain working in weird ways, I developed this really dope game. Also training with Marcelo, I developed a really cool guillotine game. And so I think the creativity really helped me. If I did not have that foundation, like when I was trying it as a blue belt, it kind of led to disaster. So I think, I was just watching this Jimi Hendrix documentary, and he said music is half reality, half fantasy. And I think that can be applied really beautifully to jiu-jitsu, where it's like half reality, fundamentals. How do I hold people? How do I escape? When do I need to fucking abandon ship? And then half fantasy, that guy's across the map, but I bet I can like dive for an ankle lock, and then when he goes to defend it, I can leap over his body to a guillotine. And like, if you have sound fundamentals and confidence, like, yeah, fuck yeah, you can make that work.
And that's so true, and that's so important pretty much in any type of innovation, right? You couldn't, if you were an architect, you couldn't innovate on building a house until you knew how to build a house, right?
Right.
And so
like you look at like Franklin Lloyd Webber's shit and it looks really dope, but it's like he has to take some 101 classes first, or else structurally it would be like, oh, that looks cool, and then a family would move in and then they would all die because the house would crumble on them like the fucking Wizard of Oz.
Exactly. And so that's my biggest thing. Like anytime I get the chance to, sometimes people just start class and they just start in whatever class is being taught. But if I ever get the chance with someone who is new, to like start teaching them, I always say, look, we'll start teaching you bottom side control. Like, I know it doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but the truth is this is where you're going to be at for most of your jiu-jitsu for the next 6 months, right?
I teach the trap and roll is the first thing I always teach them, because it's like, yours makes more sense. You're right, they're going to be in side control probably more than mounted, but I like trap and roll because it's a bad position they're going to be in a lot, and it's also like a little bit of magic where they go, oh, you know what I mean? Like, it's like that cool, like, holy shit. But yeah, exact same concept, because like, and also you just, one of the things I tell people when they're new is like, kind of similar to what I was talking about before, like, embrace getting your ass kicked, because even from a self-defense point of view, the days you're getting your ass kicked, you're still training your body to not panic when a stranger grabs you. And when you're out in the street, and I would say this when I would teach Muay Thai too, like, just not turning your back when someone's throwing punches, even though you're getting your ass kicked by pro fighters in here, you're a step ahead of people on the street, because most people, when they're grabbed, they'll do something fucking stupid. Or if someone's throwing shots, they'll turn their back, or they'll literally end up fucking fetal. And so even the days you get your ass kicked, just like being okay with that. And that's probably something else that helped from comedy too, where like I have bombed enough to, be a little humble on the mats. And then conversely, I have fought enough terrifying people to not give a fuck on stage, because like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to attack me? Like, all right, that's cool too. Like, they kind of balance each other out.
Yeah. So you had said your favorite thing to teach is the trap and roll. And so I figured now would be the perfect time to say how you and I met, which was, your nephew trains at my gym.
He sure does.
Yeah, and so I believe he just turned 6. Is that I know?
Dude, I freeze frame because I have 5 siblings, or I'm one of 5, and then 2 nephews. I freeze frame like my brother now, who just turned 30. He's always 16 to me. Koa, my little nephew, he's always 2, but I guess a 2-year-old couldn't do jiu-jitsu. So yeah, you're probably right. He's probably around 6. He's
Okay,
adorable.
I think
he's adorable.
He is, and so there was just something though. You taught a kids class for us, and
that was
you showed trap and roll, right?
You remember when my sister had us fucking fight in front of a bunch of people?
What was
like a lunatic?
What was that about?
That was her being an insane person. Where Josh and I taught a wonderful. We like co-taught a class together. In true jiu-jitsu spirit, no competition, not coming together, and all the parents are like set up watching in chairs. And my sister just goes, you know what everybody really wants to see? And I was like, who the fuck's talking? And like, why don't you guys fight? And I was like, that's not what anybody wants to see. Yeah. It's certainly not what I want to do. And then we had to like do like a minute-long round in front of people. And I was like, the whole time, and you probably did this too, I'm just like, I don't know what the etiquette is here. Mm-hmm. It's like, if we seriously start going 1,000% in fighting, it's not going to be fun for anybody. Mm-hmm. It's going to be super awkward. And yeah, it was easily the most uncomfortable I've been in a jiu-jitsu setting. Minus when Eddie Bravo, very high, tried to get me to do stand-up in front of his class instead of paying a mat fee, and I was just like, I'm gonna kill myself. I can't do this.
Can I just pay the mat fee?
I was just him. Let me pay the mat fee. Let me pay the mat fee. He's like, you gotta pay in jokes, and I was like, this is my nightmare.
So, that's a really weird thing that happens with this totally off topic of where I want to go, but that is a really weird thing that happens with comedians, that you are just expected to have jokes on hand. Nobody comes up to me and says, show me some jiu-jitsu right now.
Totally. Yeah, I'm also like, I'm not that funny in real life. Like, and I remember I was trying, this is before Eddie and I became friends. Like, Joe called him up and was like, hey, my buddy's in town. This was forever ago. Can he come train? And Eddie, this is pre-parent Eddie, so he was a little more reckless, I believe. And when he was like, you got to pay in jokes, man. You got to pay in jokes. I was like, this is but I tried to like logically explain that to him. I was like, my jokes are very long-winded and they're a little alienating and like nobody wants to hear them. Like, it's like the drunk uncle. Eddie knows so much about comedy. He was just fucking with me. But yeah, when you get that uncle, what's even funnier is when they try to, I think what people still think that comedy is like what it was in the vaudeville days, when like I've had drunk people come up to me and they're like, hey, I got one for you. And you're like, oh, I do my own stuff. And they're like, no, I got one for you. All right. So like a Mexican, and you're like, nope. it's like these like joke book jokes that are always horrific. And I think a lot of people think that's what comedy is. And you want to sit them down. You're like, no. We're all very sad, tortured people. And this is like, I always tell people I'm a writer. Like if I'm in a taxi and they ask what I'm doing, I say writer, which still leads to some bullshit. Like, what do you write? And I'm like, kind of weird stuff. But they're not going to be like, yeah, recite me a passage. Whereas if you say jokes, and then you look like an asshole for not saying jokes. But yeah, total nightmare. But I guess my sister finally did do it. Show me some jiu-jitsu. She had us fight. So it worked.
That was some like, you guys, we're third graders and your sister's in 8th grade. And she's like, okay, we're having a fight club in the backyard after we got done playing Tea Party, and you guys fight each other.
Yeah, it was so funny. And all the parents were there, and she did it again, lovingly. But I was like, one day we have to roll for real, because I was like, this is second. Minus Eddie Bravo trying to get me material. I will say she loves you so much and speaks so highly, and Koa is so obsessed with jiu-jitsu now. And I think if he went to, I was like really excited for him to want to start jiu-jitsu and talk to him about it. But I was also very nervous about like, where is he going to train? Is there going to be a good school? Because you know, a lot of jiu-jitsu MMA places can really turn people off. And the second I met you, dude, I was like, oh, we're so good. But yeah, he had me like send him a video of like a drill to practice at home while they were like locked down. Like he's just up, he's wearing his little rash guard. He's obsessed with it.
And so, yeah, and so he just seems to really love it. He's a really, really nice kid. But here's what I wanted to bring up with you.
Yes, please.
You know, with the pandemic, I was going through some Facebook photos. Okay.
Yeah.
And so anytime you take a jiu-jitsu photo with a kid's class, it's the same as when you take it with the adult class. You all stand at that, you know, against the wall where you're covering up the logo so no one can see it. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
We're panicking. Do we shaka or do we fist?
Exactly. And then everybody, no matter what, whoever is holding the camera, and generally it is your sister that's holding the camera, they always say the same thing. Let's do a funny one. And so I looked at, this was definitely 3 different ones that I found, but I'm guessing with even more, every time that your nephew is in a funny one, his hand goes directly to my throat. And that is his funny one. And so I wasn't sure how you could bring that up at the next family gathering.
Yeah. About how violence isn't necessarily hilarious. Is that what you're going for?
And so, is it like, I don't know where the disconnect is, but why is funny one Adam's apple grab on your coach?
Why is it so dark? Yeah. Like if we're like, Koa, make a funny face, and he like gets a pen and paper and presents you with like an eviction notice, and you're like, this is psychological torture. This isn't funny at all. And he's like, no, it's funny because you're going to be homeless and you're going to shut down. Isn't that hilarious? Because I'm 6 or 2. Well, so to go back to your comedy point about not wanting to be funny, every time if you see me in a funny face picture with a group or a class, I'm borderline scowling because I'm like, I don't do funny. I don't want to do a funny face. Like sometimes I'll do like rock and roll, like stick my tongue out, and that's as far as it goes. But I will almost never do something funny on cue. It's like a insane defense. It's not me being pretentious. I'm like, I love funny face pictures. I'm like, oh, look how sweet everybody's being, and they're connected and camaraderie. Something in my brain, I can't. It's horrible. Guys, comics are a sad people, is what I'm trying to say.
Everybody, I'm really sad right now. So we'll change pace a little bit. We've already brought it up a little bit, but because I really wanted to get to this.
Yeah.
What caused you to try to become a pro wrestler?
Okay, so I grew up in like the Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart heyday of pro wrestling, Steve Austin, all that stuff. And not only that, but like wrestling was, I think because I didn't really have, sometimes when you don't have access to something, it becomes more sacred almost. Mm-hmm. For example, I'm codependent in relationships because I didn't kiss a girl till I was 18. So now anytime I get the chance, I've told one night stands I love them because they're so beautiful, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is the only chance I have. I have to keep this forever. And so with pro wrestling, we could never afford the pay-per-views, so we would watch back in the day. For you youngins, they would be scrambled on TV. There was no WWE network. They were like $60, and you could hear the commentary though through the scrambled. And not only that, but my dad didn't want me and my brother watching wrestling, so me and my brother bonded. Before we bonded over jiu-jitsu, we bonded over pro wrestling, and we would sneak into the basement, and we would put a blanket over the TV, and we would huddle, and we would watch blurred out pay-per-views. So it was like everything to us. I mean, I hitchhiked to meet Mick Foley. I was just obsessed with it. And then I started getting girlfriends, and I pretended I didn't like it, and I stopped watching. So I didn't watch during the whole like John Cena phase, which I kind of, from what I've seen, I stand by. And then I just became a couple like really cool WWE wrestlers, became like fans of mine. through like stand up or whatever. And, you know, I would start talking to them on Twitter. Like we would start DMing. And I was like, God, I still love wrestling. And I started watching wrestling again like 2 years ago. And I was also like, I guess I'm kind of an athlete now because of jiu-jitsu. And this is when I was in LA. And I was like, I'm going to try wrestling. And so I did. I mean, this is kind of the nerdy answer, which is when I dedicate myself to jiu-jitsu fully, I'm always the healthiest, but I'm not creating, you know, like there's the creativity we talked about on the mat, but I'm not like performing, I guess. But when I go full creativity, and I had to catch myself during this fucking quarantine, like I'm very easily influenced. So like I remember I did a show at the Comedy Store and it was everybody cool, man. It was fucking Joey Diaz and Russell Peters and Rogan, and we're all hanging out. And suddenly I was like, you know, and I was mainly doing jiu-jitsu at this point. And then suddenly I started drinking again and like smoking because I just wanted to be cool. Like again, that same high school peer pressure, and not peer pressure because they didn't self-imposed peer pressure. And so I had this kind of thought where I'm like, professional wrestling is kind of this beautiful balance. So like I accidentally started taking the pro classes with this guy named Brian Kendrick, and who's still in the WWE. He's great and amazing. And I didn't know it was the pro class until suddenly I was put into a match and I didn't know what to do. And all these terrifying things were happening to me. And I just went with it because I'm like a performer. And then afterwards, someone told him it was my first class. And the whole class stopped and was like, you should not have done any of that. And then they all started clapping and cheering. And he was like, yeah, just keep coming back. Like, it's cool. It was awesome. But what I loved about it is, so I show up. And it's just all of these huge, like huge by jiu-jitsu comparison. It's just huge guys and hot girls. And I'm like, well, I do not belong. Like no part of this cries out Jamie Kilstein. And I was really nervous and kind of intimidated. No part of me is like, but I can beat up all of these people. Like I'm just like, I felt like the nerd again. And the first thing you do, even in this pro class, is you all line up and one at a time you get in the ring and you just do forward rolls across, you know, one rope, just forward rolls. And the first guy does it and suddenly everyone starts clapping and they're sincerely clapping. Like they're cheering for forward rolls. These are people who can dive out of the ring, who do dope stuff. And I realized I'm like, right, you guys are all theater dorks. And I say that with nothing but love. And like pro wrestling, what was so beautiful about it is it was this combination of health and being an athlete, but also like, yo, we're putting on tights and we're pretending to fight. And we're trying to be funny and we're trying to be weird and we're trying to, you know. And so I kind of thought, because I've had an identity crisis for like 20 fucking years, I kind of thought it was actually going to be the thing that saved me, where I'm like, oh, it's a way to be weird and creative and also keep myself in check and stay healthy and mentally disciplined. You know, because the thing with comedy, man, it wasn't until I started doing jiu-jitsu that I was around people that would talk about things like positive self-talk or visualization or not fucking hating yourself. Because I was never around athletes. I was only around comedians. And in comedy, self-hatred is really like a commodity. Like, you know, you're always bitching and you're always shitting on people and shitting on things. And so like, I really needed to be around positive people, which is why jiu-jitsu was so great. And like, look, it's really cool that Rogan does what he does now. Like that is a really important part of the comedy community where it's about lifting each other up. And like, he talks about health and jiu-jitsu. And like, I'm so glad we have that. But I started in New York and we did not have that by any means. It was just like the more of a train wreck you were, the more kind of revered you were. So that's what's cool about doing this jiu-jitsu podcast with Drew now, is I feel like I can be creative and weird and funny while jiu-jitsu is still a huge part of my life. So the, Rear Naked Radio kind of ended up being my pro wrestling. But that was kind of what I was searching for, is like, how can I still perform and but also stay healthy and keep jiu-jitsu a big part of my life? Because you're going on the road and shit, and you tell yourself you're gonna find jiu-jitsu gyms in every city, but like I've trained around the world, man. Like I've rolled with Hodger and Cobrinha and Marcel, like the best people on the fucking planet, but you go to a lot of weird towns and you're tired and you're doing shows and you're out late the night before. I will always train on a Thursday, telling myself that I will continue to train Friday and Saturday. And then like those shows come around and you're like, and kind of beaten down. So I don't know. One day I'm still going to get in the pro wrestling ring. That's still, maybe I'll do commentary. I feel like I'm suited.
No, man, you got to go out there and you got to do it. That's still on life goals. That is one of the ones that I have to check off.
Did you go through a wrestling phase too?
Actually, that was a big reason for really being into jiu-jitsu.
Me too.
Yeah, and so it was like this would be a great part of my game in wrestling. Doing jiu-jitsu. My mom made me actually try out jiu-jitsu, but I really looked at it once I started. It was like, even the first year of training, like, this will be great for pro wrestling.
Yeah, I did the same thing with kickboxing when I was younger, where I ended up in the hospital because we had like a backyard wrestling thing, and we were going to like send the VHS tape to like Vince McMahon. And I took this chair shot and I had to get like 15 staples in my head and I'm gushing blood, but we didn't have like a regular folding chair. We just had this huge, probably hepatitis covered, like very heavy stepladder. And after the stepladder fell on my ankle, I thought I broke my ankle. So I'm limping back to the backstage area. And suddenly someone goes, "Dude, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, my ankle will be fine." And he's like, "No, I can see your brain." And like, apparently I was just bashed open so hard. And I was like, "Oh, that'll look even cooler for the tape that I'm sending to the WWE." But then when I watched the tape, I literally look like, it doesn't even look like it hit me. I look like I'm like, and like pulling away. What's crazy is I did some cool jiu-jitsu stuff. I like showed some of the guys who were better than me some like jiu-jitsu ideas. And my friend Kyle O'Reilly, who's in NXT, he's trying to incorporate. He was like tag team champions. He's trying to incorporate a lot of it. You see him do this like floating knee on belly things, which is cool. But a lot of real fighting is actually sort of counterproductive to wrestling. And so I thought in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm going to look really cool because I know how to actually just keep my fucking hands up and bring my hands back to my face when I throw punches or whatever. But what I learned is the reason they're throwing these big, wide haymakers, these dumb-looking punches, is because everything has to be big because you're performing for the back of the arena. Mm-hmm. So like if you're tight and doing really technical slips and stuff, like maybe on TV that'll look cool, but like you actually have to do these really over-exaggerated motions. That's why a lot of the jiu-jitsu and a lot of the MMA, at least my theory, is like it looks like garbage. And me and you see it and we go, oh, we'll just do it better because we know what we're doing. But a lot of it is like purposefully has to look like garbage. Mm-hmm. But man, I mean, when I grew up watching those old like Sakuraba, or not Sakuraba, Jesus, like Super Crazy versus Tajiri, or like the old like Guerrero, Benoit Malenko, like all those reversals and shit like that, like from Japan, I was like, oh, you could do some dope shit with jiu-jitsu. I do still believe that. I will also say this, so you know, it is so much more tiring than you think it's going to be, and everything hurts. Like, when I was a kid, I would fantasize that I'm like, oh, the ring's going to feel like pillows, and the ropes, well, the ring is like legitimate. It's this. There's just springs under it. So if you happen to land correctly, it doesn't hurt as much. Mm-hmm. So that's number one. But if you land on your neck or your knee, like everything fucking hurts. But like that I figured. What I did not figure is the ropes are elevator cable. So when you're running the ropes, first of all, you're doing sprints. So when you're running against the ropes, all those back and forth that don't seem that much, they're literal all-out sprints. But when you start, you have lashes on your back because it is legitimate. Like, they don't just bend back. You have to fucking run at them. And if you watch really closely, if I'm running at the rope, they'll do a slight grab to turn themselves into the rope because you're pulling yourself into that so you can get like a big bounce. But it is fucking hard, and that shit hurts too. Like, it's bananas how much everything hurts.
Yeah, man, that's I love wrestling a ton, and the whole time, everybody that you named, I tried to not be like, oh yeah, I know who that is. But so I tried to play it cool because in jiu-jitsu, people always make fun of you for watching wrestling.
Fuck
right?
that.
Yeah.
Fuck that. Did you listen? So on my podcast 2 weeks ago, I had this guy named Sam Roberts, and Sam Roberts is like one of the heel commentators for the WWE. He hosts a show on Sirius with Jim Norton, and our whole conversation was about this. It was about just not giving it. He told this story like on his fucking first night in college. All of his friends went out to a frat party to get laid, and he got Hulk Hogan's like greatest smashes or something like that on TV. And when they were like, we're going to a frat party, he was like, oh great, I can watch Hulkamania or whatever. Watch that. His 21st fucking birthday. It was a Monday, so he stayed home, watched Monday Night Raw, best night of his life. His whole studio is just action figures and pro wrestling, and he makes a killer living and has an amazing family. And the whole episode kind of ended up being like owning the shit you love, whether it's pro wrestling, whether it's like he also doesn't drink. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I've gone back and forth because I'm much happier when I'm not drinking. But then sometimes I'll go to comedy clubs and I want to fit in or whatever. And he's like, oh, I just don't give a shit. He just doesn't care. And I think that's something that a lot of people could learn from, where we do this sort of, in comedy, I call it's like ironic detachment, where we're afraid to be passionate about something that could be seen as nerdy. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I really love Beyonce's Lemonade, or I really love pro wrestling or whatever. And so you just hold it in instead of just like being the person that it's like, no, I'm going to own that I love it because it brings me fucking joy. And by the way, any of those jiu-jitsu guys who make fun of you would hobble out of 1 day of wrestling practice because those guys need to be in better shape than we do because they have to be fucking hot. So you're doing sprints against the ropes, then you're doing burpees. It is harder than any jiu-jitsu workout I've done, maybe ever.
That's really cool. That's really okay. So back to jiu-jitsu on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show.
What you love, and don't the people who, and again, this isn't specific to you because I'm sure it's like your boys just giving you a hard time, like you give them a hard time about whatever. But I will say that like you'll get people like strangers who make fun of jiu-jitsu, and they go, oh, so you just like roll around like with like a bunch of sweaty guys, and it's like, oh, you're doing that because you're a chicken shit and you're afraid to do that. And it's the same with pro wrestling. Anytime you catch yourself making fun of someone who's passionate about something, you have to kind of ask yourself like, oh, is this because I'm not passionate about something? Or is this because I don't have the balls to like admit I love something that may seem silly? But then when you find someone else who loves wrestling, you get to like experience such joy by being like, oh, I grew up doing this and like watching this and blah, blah, blah. That's so much more worth it than being embarrassed because like a couple douchebags who don't know what joy feels like make fun of you. You know what I mean?
That is very true.
Yeah.
I think that's just something really important to keep in mind is like, with jiu-jitsu, I think it doesn't happen as much because we are all jiu-jitsu nerds, right? We come in and we're like, oh man, we just love jiu-jitsu. But, as we, kind of get, as we just kind of get outside of the jiu-jitsu world, you'll notice that people will always be like, whoa, you spend that much of your time. I mean, for me, it's different at this point because I run my own school, right?
Of course.
And so, people like see that as like, oh, you're making an income off this. But, for some of my students that are, lawyers and stuff like that, it doesn't make sense for them to other people to do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. One of the most important things I can say to anyone listening right now is like we are constantly facing the societal pressure to be mediocre and to be miserable and to, there's no way you can make a living doing something that makes you happy. And there's no way you can make a living doing something you love. And, there's something called crabs in a bucket where if you have a bucket, a lot of times when one of the crabs goes to escape, all the other crabs, instead of like letting the homie escape and help the rest up, will start to pull back the crab into the bucket. And I think we do that oftentimes where people are well-intentioned. Are you sure you want to try comedy? Are you sure you want to make a living doing jiu-jitsu? Isn't that just a hobby? But deep down, they have to ask themselves, am I doing it because like I really wanted to be in a band, but ended up working at an office and I'm miserable? And if all of us could just, instead of shitting on people who are making a living or trying to make a living accomplishing their dream, if all of us could just figure out like, yeah, we all deserve to be doing something that makes us happy or something that brings us joy, or maybe we have a shitty office job that we don't like, but we get to do jiu-jitsu twice a day, we figured out a way to make it work and that's our passion, whatever. But what happens is we're just like bred to believe that you can't make a living with your passion or whatever. And then once our opportunity, or we think our opportunity, is passed to be happy, then we start kind of shitting on everybody else who does get to do that. Every successful athlete, every successful comedian, had a majority of people, well-intentioned or not well-intentioned, try to talk them out of it. Mm-hmm. And it's a scary thing, but like, man, if you see somebody doing something like that, like, you should support the shit out of them. And if you're getting shit because you want to start a podcast or you want to make jiu-jitsu your livelihood or whatever, you need to step away from those people, at least for a little while, and surround yourself with other dreamers and visionaries and people who are going to support you even when shit is really scary,
Mm-hmm. Dude, that's really good. I think that is something that people can definitely take away from today's episode, is just having fun, man, doing what you enjoy, and yes, whether you make money off of that or not, just doing what you love.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so at this point of the podcast, we're close to the end. I would like to play a game with my guests. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the game is called Take It or Leave It. Okay. I am going to make a statement, and you can take it, which means you agree with it, or leave it, which means you disagree, and we can discuss it. So, for example, I would say, the sky is blue, and you would say,
leave it.
Leave it? You don't believe that the sky is blue?
Sorry, I've been listening to a lot of Eddie Bravo. Take it.
Okay.
Yo, if the Earth's flat, bro, who knows what's going on out there?
That is true. Okay, so we'll start it out. This has become a hot button topic on the show. Okay. Take it or leave it.
Okay.
Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Take it, you fucking idiots.
Yeah. That's what.
How the fuck is that even a hot button? Yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you, you have a strong 3% of society that hates Christmas, and they think that Die Hard is not a Christmas movie, and they're bad people.
You know what? That's why we're in the trouble we're in right now, and we're all fucking quarantined, is because some people don't use logic and go do dumb shit and spread a virus all over the place. Die Hard's a Christmas movie. It's the greatest Christmas movie. It's incredible. Like, there are morals to it. Hero's journey. It takes place during fucking Christmas. There's Christmas music. You have a jolly old man who, instead of Santa Claus, is the guy from Family Matters. The Christmas movie.
That is a great argument.
Maniacs.
Yeah. Okay, so next, take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. Jamie Kilstein's Epstein choke is the most effective choke for fake suicides.
It is for fake suicide specifically. If you have a posse of people who can help you with covering it up, then yes, 100%. It's the move, dude. I did not think that video would blow up the way it blew up, and I went to a Muay Thai fight that week, and I had strangers coming up to me being like, "Yo, Epstein choke," and I was like,
that will be what you're known for in the jiu-jitsu world.
I've had to start when I was rolling. I had to start using it more. It was a once in a blue moon move for me, but when I started searching it, I was getting way more people with it because I'm like, fuck, man, like the guillotine's my game, but I was like, I have a stupid fucking video about this, so I started hitting people more with it. It's one of my favorite moves in general because the person gives it to you, and my head and arm choke sucks. But anyway.
That's awesome. Okay, so next, take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. 10th Planet is the best affiliation in jiu-jitsu.
What do you mean by affiliation?
I mean by
like in what, like, are we talking competitors or are we talking
no. Just what you feel the word best means.
Okay, here's what I'll say. I will always be, I mean, I coached at Henzo's, but I will always be a Marcelo guy. There is something so special about him as a person. The way he treats people, his attitude, his love of jiu-jitsu, and obviously like his skills, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't really fit in as much. I have a ton of friends under the Henzo affiliation. I didn't fit in as much there. 10th Planet, I do literally nothing from their game. I like kind of figured out lockdown. I don't do rubber guard. I don't do truck. I don't do anything. However, there is something about the vibe of misfits and freaks that speaks to me at my core and like in my heart soul, where like I've hung out with Gio once. Boogie did our podcast, and I consider them very close friends that I text to check in on them. Like when my cat died, Gio was like the first one who reached out. And like I love and also I went down to BMAC, who runs 10th Planet in Alabama school. And he was like, I promoted a black belt that has never played rubber guard. He's like, 10th Planet is all about creativity. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when I interviewed Eddie for Rear Naked Radio, he was saying the same thing. He's like, I just wanted to do shit that people weren't doing and show people things that people didn't have an answer for. And so when it comes to the ethos and 10th Planet spiritually and what they stand for, I don't know shit. I've only been friends with 10th Planet people for probably 6 months. And I love fucking everything they stand for.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so last take it or leave it.
Real quick though, 9/11 was not an inside job, and the Earth is round.
Okay. So that was actually going to be my next take it or leave it question.
Perfect. Not an inside job. Not an inside job, but we used it to justify an illegal and immoral role. There's my middle ground.
Okay. I like that. So
did I just call a war a role? I think I said the
you
Iraq
said roll.
war.
I think you were talking about jiu-jitsu again.
Great. Yeah. Once again, just like we slap and bumped, and that gave us permission, like we were talking about.
Exactly. That was the slap bump. I like it. Okay. So here it is. This is the last take it or leave it. Take it or leave it.
My heart's racing.
This is a good one.
Okay.
In an IBJJF rule set, Biden beats Bernie.
Oh, leave it.
Leave it.
Here's the thing about Bernie. We can all look at him as like, he's so idealistic. A bird landed on the podium once. Like, he's a softie. Motherfucker has been going against the Senate forever. Was marching in like civil rights. Although I would believe civil war. He's so civil rights marches. Like, he has been on the right/unpopular side of history for so long that like he would throw down. And to be honest, I think he is waiting for someone to push him. And he picture him running across the stage and tackling someone just because he's so fed up right now. I mean, if we look at what's happening with Corona, I don't consider myself a socialist, but the things he is calling out, even if you disagree with the methods that he wants to fix them, the billionaires are getting richer. Our healthcare system is broken. I mean, we are seeing all of that come to fruition right now. Small businesses should not all be shutting down because we have to take a month off. Like, we have a broken system. And he has been screaming that forever, that I think now if someone tries to say our healthcare system is fine, motherfucker would run across the stage and attack you. With that said, I could see Biden like having like a knife in his boot and pulling some like shady shit. But if we're talking IBJJF rules, no knives. I'm going to go Bernie based on heart because Biden is a hacky corporate sellout. He is the chain, the chain karate place versus jiu-jitsu where all they care about is like attendance cards and shit. I was going to call out specifically, but I didn't want to get you in trouble. So I just said karate instead. Let's say Krav Maga because we can all agree that's stupid. So that is how I feel.
So how does Bernie win?
Blind rage.
Blind rage.
Blind rage. Just like mounting. Biden goes to turn. Bernie just holding his head. Have you ever gone with someone who you get mad at, and like when you flatten them out, you just kind of like hold their head against the mat?
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm into it.
Because you're a wrestling guy, I can say this. One time, have you ever used a pro wrestling? One time I got so mad at a bigger blue belt who was going crazy on me when I was injured that I tapped him out with a Boston Crab.
So there was a time that I actually hit somebody that was actually pretty good at jiu-jitsu with a figure four. He went De La Hiva, and I had his pant leg. I grabbed I had the De La Hiva hook pant leg for whatever reason, and it just kind of happened. He was kind of knocking me over as we were falling into that, I hit it. It was beautiful.
If I can get the sharpshooter on someone, that's my goal.
Yeah, it's too dangerous for jiu-jitsu though.
It is too. That you know what? That's a solid point.
Yeah, that's what I have. One of my students is one of my blue belts. He always talks about how hey man, look at what Brock Lesnar did. He went to the UFC and he won, and he always, because people always love to get mad about pro wrestling. He's like he proved it. He said he proved that pro wrestling. He goes, he couldn't even make it in the WWE, and he goes to the UFC and he wins, and that shows that the UFC is what's big.
So fucking funny. I gotta say, wrestling nerds, I don't know if it's because we were bullied a lot or just because like we love something so clearly on its face dorky. Wrestling nerds are some of the fucking funniest, most creative people. You know who's a big, and there's a UFC crossover, Ryan Loco. Do you follow him on Instagram or Twitter? He's like one of the most known photographers who's taken some of the most like iconic pictures in the UFC and stuff like that. But he's a huge wrestling nerd too. And this guy's like good looking dude, hot wife, makes a living as an artist. And like when you get that kind of like confidence mixed with the wrestling nerdom, he's one of the funniest fucking human beings on the planet. Yeah, I love wrestling people with all my heart.
That's awesome. Okay, so last question. This is always how we finish.
Okay.
So the situation is this. I am at a Jamie Kilstein seminar, and I'm a blue belt. I raise my hand at question and answer, and I say, Jamie, how do I suck less at jiu-jitsu?
I say, get the fuck out. Yeah, so this goes back to what we talked about before, which is how do you find that balance of aggression and chillness? And what I always say is you have to be like half Woody Allen and half Kanye West, where you have to be critical of yourself and always want to get better, while also being confident enough to be like, I'm going to go try some weird shit, You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to look at everything as a learning experience, which means the days you get your ass kicked, you pull a Jocko and you say, good, what can I learn from that? You have to realize that tapping someone out isn't necessarily a victory, but a victory is like if a black belt arm bars you 5 times, instead of being like, oh, I got to fucking submit him, you go, how about I just get arm barred 4 times? And you have to suck less. I mean, literally, that's what I say to people. You just have to suck less, a little less every day. And it's the same if you want to do comedy. Like, you're going to get your ass kicked for, in comedy, all the like famous comics who we all love, they tell people, and this is what I was told, it was either Louis or David Tellman that told me this. They're like, it takes 8 years to get decent, to find your, that means you spend 8 years fucking being garbage. And jiu-jitsu, it doesn't take that long before you at least start seeing something, but you have to just love it. And here's something Marcelo said in an interview once, and it's the most badass thing anyone's ever said, where during his when the most heat was on him, his heyday, some jiu-jitsu magazine was like, what do you have that other people don't have? And this is where other people would say, my speed, or like my technique, or like whatever. And he goes, I just love jiu-jitsu more than everybody. That was him shit talking, was I just love it more. But there's something so true to that, where like every time I've been tempted to sell out, I like physically can't do it. And every time I go, you know what, this isn't going to make money, but I don't give a shit, I'm just going to do it because it's what I love, I will make money. And it's the same with your jiu-jitsu game, where like if you just go because you fucking love it, and that means love getting your ass kicked and love like the commute after a long day of work, and then like you literally cannot lose. But if you start just being all fucking precious about it and being mean to yourself and resenting people at the gym, it's like, ugh, that's how you're gonna suck.
That is a great answer. Thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Can I plug my podcast?
Of course.
Hey, so Drew and I, because Jitsu, we host Rear Naked Radio. We're trying to really build, we have a fucking really cool community. And it's awesome because I actually just texted Drew about this, where like, even though that guy has like 120,000 fucking followers, and they're jiu-jitsu people, the people that are attracted to our show are really wonderful, and they're not like the sort of shitty jiu-jitsu community who like, listen to one episode of like a Rogan and now are just like shit talking on Gordon Ryan's page. They're like really cool, and they're really sweet, and they help each other. But also like, we've had Jake Shields, Carlos Condit, Kenny Florian, Huron Gracie, Eddie. Like, I mean, it's been pretty fucking crazy for a show that's brand new. So that, and you don't have to, it's free. So that's Rear Naked Radio. And then for me, with like mental health stuff, I have a podcast called Jamie Kilstein Podcast. And we interview cool people, and I talk about this bullshit.
Yeah, and this probably shouldn't be something that I say on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu podcast or the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, but Rear Naked Radio is my favorite jiu-jitsu podcast.
Oh, is it?
It really is. I really do enjoy listening to it.
I got to say this. I know we got to end. I literally lost my voice. But I want, like, there were some people who have podcasts who are like kind of like less, they were a little shittier to me when I was like, I'm gonna start a podcast. And to me, like, I'm so glad you asked me to be on this, because I was like, all I want to do, like, I'm gonna promote, when you post this or if you post clips, I'm gonna send people to this as much as I would to my show. And it's like, again, when it comes to ego, the reason Rogan is Rogan is because he will have Bert and Segura, and there are people who vibe more with Bert and just listen to Bert and maybe stopped listening to Rogan. But Joe didn't care because he was confident enough to be like, no, I'm going to bring you on and I want to hype you up and I want you to have your own podcast. And so, like, I think we should be doing the same thing. So many jiu-jitsu people don't make money with jiu-jitsu, or get fucked over, or are getting, taken advantage of by the same shitty sponsorship offers or the same shitty tournaments or the same whatever. Whereas, like, hey, if we actually banded fucking together and we're like, I want people I love to start podcasts, and I want their podcast to be successful. So I love that you said that. I was very excited to do this podcast. And yeah, fuck all that competition shit.
Thank you, man. Thank you again for being on. It's really cool to have you on.
Yeah, this was a blast, dude. Thank you.